Mara's hands were shaking, and it wasn't just from the cold. She pulled her daughter closer as they walked down the dark street, their breath coming out in white clouds under the dim glow of the streetlights. Elena was only 7, small for her age, and she hadn't complained once even though Mara knew her feet must be aching. They'd been walking for hours now, ever since the shelter turned them away. Full capacity. The woman at the desk had said, barely looking up, "Try again tomorrow." Tomorrow felt impossible when you had nowhere to sleep tonight. Mara blinked back tears and kept moving. She'd lost their apartment 3 weeks ago after missing too many shifts at the diner. Her manager had been understanding at first, but when Elena got sick and Mara had to stay home for 5 days straight, that understanding ran out. Without the job, the rent became impossible. Without the rent, everything else fell apart. Now they had 2 garbage bags of clothes, $17, and a daughter who still believed her mother could fix anything. "Mama, are we almost there?" Elena's voice was soft, tired but trusting. Mara opened her mouth to answer, but the lie wouldn't come. She stopped walking and knelt down, pulling Elena into a hug that was as much for herself as it was for her daughter. "I don't know, baby. I'm sorry." Elena hugged her back and said nothing. That made it worse. A car slowed down beside them. Mara stiffened and stood up quickly, positioning herself between Elena and the street. But the window rolled down, and a man's voice called out, calm and uncertain, "Excuse me, are you okay?" Mara turned. The car was expensive, something sleek and black that didn't belong in this part of town. The man behind the wheel looked to be in his late 30s, clean-cut, with dark hair and eyes that seemed cautious but not unkind. "We're fine," Mara said automatically. The man glanced at Elena, then at the garbage bags, then back at Mara. He didn't say anything for a moment, and Mara could see him deciding something. Finally, he spoke again. "I own a small and a few blocks from here. It's not much, but it's warm. You're welcome to stay the night. No charge." Mara's first instinct was to refuse. Strangers didn't help people for free, not in her experience. But Elena shifted beside her, and Mara felt how cold her daughter's hand was, how thin her jacket. She looked at the man again and saw something in his expression that didn't seem dangerous, just tired. "Sad, maybe. Why would you do that?" she asked. The man hesitated. "Because I can." It wasn't much of an answer, but it was honest. Mara made a choice. "Okay, thank you." His name was Adrian, and he wasn't lying about the inn. It was small, tucked between 2 larger buildings, with a hand-painted sign that read the Laurel House. Inside, it smelled like wood polish and lavender. Adrian led them up a narrow staircase to a room on the 2nd floor and unlocked the door without a word. The room was simple but clean. A bed with a thick quilt, a small bathroom, a radiator that rattled softly as it pushed out heat. Elena's eyes went wide, and she walked to the bed like it was something sacred. "There's extra blankets in the closet," Adrian said quietly. "And the kitchen downstairs is open if you're hungry." Mara's throat tightened. "I don't know how to thank you." Adrian shook his head. "You don't have to." He lingered in the doorway for a moment, then left without another word. That night, Elena fell asleep almost instantly, curled under the quilt with her small hand tucked beneath her cheek. Mara sat beside her and cried silently, letting the fear and exhaustion pour out where her daughter couldn't see. The next morning, Adrian knocked softly and brought them breakfast, toast, eggs, and tea. He didn't ask questions, didn't push. Over the following days, he let them stay without mentioning payment, and Mara found herself watching him carefully, trying to understand. Adrian was quiet, almost a fault. He ran the inn by himself, checking guests in and out, cleaning rooms, fixing small things that broke. He moved through the space like someone used to being alone. But when Elena started drawing pictures at the front desk, using the scrap paper Adrian left out, something shifted. He would pause as he passed by, glancing at her work. Once, he even smiled. "That's a good bird," he said, pointing to one of her drawings. Elena beamed. "It's a robin. My mama says they mean hope." Adrian's smile faded a little, but he nodded. "Your mama's right." After 2 weeks, Mara couldn't take the charity anymore. She found Adrian in the small office behind the front desk and asked if there was any work she could do. He looked surprised and thoughtful. "I could use help with the rooms," he said. "And the laundry, if you're serious." The work was hard but honest, and it felt good to be useful again. Elena helped where she could, folding towels and arranging soaps in the bathrooms. Adrian paid Mara fairly and never made her feel like she owed him anything beyond the work itself. Slowly, carefully, something like a family began to form. Elena adored Adrian. She would sit beside him while he fixed broken faucets or painted over scuffed walls, asking him questions about everything. At first, Adrian answered with short, careful sentences. But over time, he started talking more. He told her about the inn, how it belonged to his parents. He told her about books he liked and places he'd been. One evening, while Mara was finishing the laundry, she heard Elena ask, "Do you have a family, Adrian?" There was a long pause. Mara stopped folding and listened. "I had a sister," Adrian said quietly. "Her name was Sophie. She died when she was 16. Car accident. I was driving." Mara's chest tightened. "Was it your fault?" Elena asked, her voice soft and without judgment. "I don't know," Adrian said. "I've spent 20 years trying to figure that out." Elena didn't say anything for a moment. Then, "I think she wouldn't want you to be sad forever." Adrian's voice cracked just a little. "Maybe not." Winter deepened, and the small family found a rhythm. But in early February, Mara started feeling weak. At first, she ignored it, pushing through her shifts. Then the coughing started. Then the fevers. By the time Adrian convinced her to see a doctor, it was pneumonia, advanced and aggressive. The hospital admitted her immediately. Elena stayed with Adrian. He took her to visit every day, and Mara would hold her daughter's hand and tell her everything would be okay. But Adrian saw the truth in the doctor's eyes. Mara was getting worse. One afternoon, when Elena was in the hospital cafeteria with a nurse, Mara called Adrian to her bedside. Her voice was thin, barely there. "If something happens to me," she said, "promise me you'll take care of her. Promise me she won't end up in the system." Adrian's hands were shaking. "Mara, promise me, Adrian." He looked at her, this woman who had trusted him when she had no reason to, and nodded. "I promise." Mara died 3 days later. Adrian kept his word. He became Elena's legal guardian, navigating the paperwork and the grief with a determination he didn't know he had. Elena cried every night for weeks, and Adrian sat beside her bed, whispering that it was okay, that her mother loved her, that she wasn't alone. The years passed. Elena grew. She studied hard, drew constantly, and reminded Adrian every single day why life was worth living. He watched her graduate high school, then college. She became a teacher, just like she'd always wanted. On the day of her graduation, Elena stood at the podium to give a speech. Adrian sat in the audience, older now, grayer, but still steady. Elena's voice rang out clear and strong. "I want to thank someone who saved my life when I was 7 years old. A man who stopped his car on a cold street and decided to care when he didn't have to. My mom used to say that kindness doesn't cost anything, but I know now that's not true. Kindness costs everything. It costs time and fear and pieces of your heart. Adrian gave all of that to me and my mom, and because of him, I'm standing here today." She looked directly at him, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you for being my family." Adrian's vision blurred. He stood and clapped, and the whole room joined him. For the first time in 20 years, he didn't feel like he was carrying Sophie's ghost. He felt like he'd finally done something that mattered. Afterward, Elena ran to him and threw her arms around his neck. "I love you, Dad." Adrian held her tight and let himself cry. "I love you too."